This was supposed to be a normal late-night meal, but in less than 30 seconds, it turned into a moment that could destroy someone's life forever. Because when Ice Spice walked into that McDonald's, nobody expected what was about to happen next, and now, with legal action underway, the consequences are getting serious. At first, everything looked calm. She was sitting in a booth, eating, minding her business, no cameras, no stage, no performance. Just a global star trying to have a normal moment like anyone else. But then, a stranger approached. And what started as a simple interaction quickly turned into something far more aggressive. Questions were asked. Tension built. And before anyone could process what was happening, a slap. Right there. In public. On camera. And what happened next? Pure chaos. Tables knocked over. Drinks spilling. People shouting. The situation exploded so fast that even those watching the footage later couldn't believe how quickly things spiraled out of control. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because this didn't end inside that restaurant. The confrontation spilled outside, onto the streets, where things escalated even further, with punches thrown, people chasing, and one moment in particular that has everyone asking the same question. Did this go way too far? And now, it's no longer just a viral clip. It's a legal battle. Because Ice Spice isn't letting this go. Reports say she's taking this all the way, lawsuits, charges, and potentially life-changing consequences for the person involved. And with new details surfacing, and talk of footage that could be used in court. One thing is clear. This situation is far from over. And what happens next might shock everyone. To understand why this situation exploded the way it did, you have to look beyond that one moment inside the restaurant, and really understand who Ice Spice is right now, not just as an artist, but as a symbol. Because this wasn't just any celebrity getting into an altercation. This was one of the fastest rising stars in the entire music industry, a name that went from unknown to unavoidable in what felt like seconds. And that kind of rise? It comes with pressure, attention, and a level of visibility that most people simply aren't prepared for. Ice Spice didn't come up the traditional way. She didn't slowly build a fan base over years, she exploded onto the scene. One viral moment, one track catching fire online, and suddenly she wasn't just trending, she was everywhere. From TikTok to radio to global charts, her presence became impossible to ignore. But here's the part people don't talk about enough. When you rise that fast, you don't just gain fans. You gain access. And access can be dangerous. Because now, everywhere you go, people feel like they know you. They feel like they have a right to approach you, talk to you, question you, even challenge you. And that's exactly the kind of energy that builds up over time until one moment, like the one in that McDonald's, pushes everything over the edge. But let's go deeper. Because this situation isn't just about fame. It's about perception. Ice Spice built a persona that feels calm, unbothered, almost untouchable. The way she carries herself, the way she responds to situations, it gives off the impression that nothing really shakes her. And for fans? That's appealing. But for others? That same energy can be misinterpreted. It can come off as distant, dismissive, even rude, especially in real-life interactions where expectations are completely different from what people see online. And that's where things start to get complicated. Because the woman involved in this situation, identified in reports as someone who claimed to be a fan, told a completely different story than what people saw in the footage. According to her, she didn't approach Ice Spice with aggression. She approached with admiration. She claimed she introduced herself, showed love, and was met with an attitude that immediately changed the tone of the interaction. Now, whether that's true or not, that belief alone is powerful enough to trigger something. Because in her mind, she wasn't just talking to a celebrity. She was talking to someone she supported. And when that expectation didn't match reality, everything shifted. Because there's a dangerous line that exists between admiration and entitlement. And in today's culture, that line is getting thinner every day. Fans don't just watch anymore. They engage. They comment. They follow every move. They feel connected. So when they finally come face to face with that person in real life, they expect a certain response. And if they don't get it, that's when emotions take over. Now add another layer to this situation. Location. This didn't happen at a private event. This didn't happen backstage. This didn't happen in a controlled environment. This happened in a McDonald's. A public space. A place where anyone can walk in, no security barriers, no controlled access, no separation between celebrity and everyday life. And that's what makes this even more intense. Because it exposes a vulnerability that people don't usually think about. Celebrities aren't always surrounded by protection. They aren't always in VIP sections. Sometimes, they are just sitting down trying to eat. And in those moments, anything can happen. Now here's where things take another turn. Because while the internet was busy debating who was right and who was wrong, something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. Legal action. The moment that footage started spreading, it wasn't just about public opinion anymore. It became evidence. And once something becomes evidence, everything changes. That's when Bradford Cohen stepped in. And if you know anything about high-profile legal cases, that name alone tells you this isn't being taken lightly. This isn't damage control. This is escalation. Because when a lawyer like that gets involved, it signals one thing. This is going to be pushed as far as it can go. Criminal charges. Civil lawsuits. Potential financial consequences. And possibly, something even bigger. Now think about that for a second. What started as a 30-second altercation inside a fast food restaurant could now turn into a full-blown legal battle that affects multiple people, multiple reputations, and even the establishment itself. Because yes, even the location is now being questioned. Why wasn't there security? Why wasn't the situation stopped before it escalated? Why was someone able to approach, engage, and physically attack without intervention? Those questions matter. Because if responsibility expands beyond just the individuals involved, this situation could reach a completely different level. And that's exactly what people started realizing. This isn't just about a slap anymore. This is about accountability. And as more details continue to surface, and more perspectives come into play, the story becomes less about what happened, and more about what's going to happen next. Because with conflicting accounts, viral footage, legal threats, and a growing public divide, this situation is no longer under control. And the moment it enters a courtroom, everything changes. Because that's where stories stop being opinions and start becoming consequences. What really happened inside that McDonald's that night is where everything stops being simple and starts getting messy. Because once the full footage began circulating, people realized something immediately. This wasn't just a random moment. This was a chain reaction. According to reports and the clips that spread across social media, Ice Spice was sitting in a booth with a friend, eating, relaxed, completely unaware that within seconds, everything was about to flip. No security surrounding her. No barriers. No warning. Just a public space, and a stranger walking directly toward her. At first, it didn't look aggressive. That's what makes this moment so unsettling. The woman approached like a fan would, casual, confident, almost like she expected a friendly interaction. She started asking questions. Where are you from? What are you doing here? The kind of small talk that, on the surface, doesn't seem dangerous. But something in the tone shifted. Something changed in the energy. Because instead of turning into a normal fan interaction, it started getting uncomfortable. And this is where the tension builds. Because depending on who you ask, this is the exact moment where the story splits into two completely different realities. According to the attacker's version, she felt disrespected. She claims Ice Spice responded with attitude, that the conversation wasn't friendly, but she felt dismissed. In her mind, she wasn't being aggressive, she was reacting to how she was treated. But the footage? It tells a different story. From what people could see, Ice Spice wasn't escalating anything. She was seated, calm, not moving toward the woman, not provoking her physically. And then, it happened. The slap. No long build-up. No dramatic warning. Just a sudden, sharp moment that instantly changed everything. And in that exact second, the situation lost all control. Because Ice Spice didn't freeze. She didn't back away. She reacted. Fast. The footage shows her jumping up, moving across the table, closing the distance immediately. What was a one-sided action instantly became a full-blown confrontation. Food knocked over. Drinks spilling. Chairs shifting. People yelling. It went from quiet to chaos in seconds. And here's where the situation escalates even further. Because it didn't stop inside. The confrontation spilled outside the restaurant, and that's where things got even more unpredictable. Multiple people involved. Voices raised. Movement everywhere. The energy outside was different. Inside, it was shock. Outside, it was anger. According to eyewitness clips, the woman reappeared after being pulled away, and instead of ending the situation, it reignited it. Another punch was thrown. Both sides engaged again. The fight continued, dragging the entire situation into the street. At this point, it wasn't even about the original interaction anymore. It had turned into something bigger. Egos. Reactions. Adrenaline. And one detail in particular made the situation even more intense. A phone. During the chaos, a phone belonging to the other group ended up in Ice Spice's hands. According to witnesses, it was damaged, possibly destroyed. Now that might seem like a small detail. But legally? That changes everything. Because now, it's not just about assault. It becomes property damage. It becomes escalation. It becomes evidence. And the moment multiple elements like that enter the situation, the legal implications multiply. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Because while the internet was replaying the fight, slowing it down, analyzing every movement, the attacker came forward. And her version? Completely flipped the narrative. She claimed she wasn't the aggressor. She said she approached as a fan. She said she was disrespected. She said the slap was a reaction, not an initiation. And just like that, everything got complicated. Because now the public wasn't just watching a fight. They were trying to decide who to believe. On one side, you have video footage. On the other side, you have a personal account. And when those two things don't match, that's when confusion turns into controversy. Some people immediately sided with Ice Spice. They said the footage was clear. That the approach was abrupt. That the physical contact came out of nowhere. But others? They started questioning what the video didn't show. What happened before the camera angle? What was said that we didn't hear? Is there context missing? And that's where the situation shifts from obvious to debatable. Because once doubt enters the conversation, it spreads. Fast. Then came another layer. The fan narrative. Because the attacker didn't present herself as a random stranger. She presented herself as a supporter who felt disrespected. And that struck a nerve online. Because it tapped into something deeper. The relationship between celebrities and fans. What do fans expect? What do celebrities owe them? Where is the line? And suddenly, this wasn't just about a fight anymore. It became a conversation about entitlement. Some people said, fans are crossing boundaries. This is exactly what happens when access becomes too easy. Others pushed back. Celebrities can't treat supporters badly and expect no reaction. And just like that, the internet split. But the biggest twist hadn't even hit yet. Because while all of this was happening publicly, something much more serious was happening behind the scenes. legal preparation. And the moment Bradford Cohen got involved, the tone of the entire situation changed. This was no longer just viral content. This was a case. A real one. Because Cohen didn't just make a casual statement. He made it clear. This will be pursued criminally and civilly. Now think about that. Criminal charges mean potential jail time. Civil action means financial consequences. And possibly both at the same time. But here's the part that escalates this even further. He didn't stop at the individuals involved. He hinted at something bigger. Holding the location accountable. And that's where the first major twist becomes undeniable. Because now, this isn't just Ice Spice vs a fan. This could become Ice Spice vs multiple parties. Individuals. Businesses. Responsibility at every level. And if that happens, this situation goes from viral to precedent-setting. Because suddenly, it raises a massive question. Are public places responsible for protecting high-profile individuals? And if the answer starts leaning toward yes, this case could impact far more than just the people involved that night. But right now, we're still at the beginning. Because evidence is still being analyzed. Statements are still being made. And the legal strategy is still unfolding. And here's the reality. What we saw on camera might only be part of the story. Because once this enters a courtroom, new details could surface. New angles could be revealed. And the version of events that people believe right now could change completely. And if that happens, everything you thought you understood about this situation might not be true at all. And just when people thought they had already seen the worst of it, that's when the situation took a turn that nobody was ready for. Because what started as a viral fight video didn't just stay online. It mutated. Within hours, clips of Ice Spice inside that McDonald's were everywhere, slowed down, zoomed in, reposted with dramatic captions, and stitched into thousands of reaction videos. Every frame was being analyzed like evidence in real time. But here's where it gets dangerous. The internet didn't just watch the footage. It started rewriting it. New angles appeared, some real, some questionable. Audio clips were enhanced, captions were added, and suddenly, people claimed they could hear things that weren't clear before. Words were being put into mouths. Intentions were being assigned without proof. And that's when the first shocking shift happened. People began turning on Ice Spice. Not everyone, but enough to change the tone. Because a new theory started spreading fast, that what happened wasn't as one-sided as it looked. Some users claimed her reaction was too aggressive. Others pointed to the moment she chased the woman outside, saying that's where things crossed the line. Self-defense ends when you pursue, one viral post read. That single sentence. It blew up. Suddenly, the narrative flipped from victim to participant. And once that flip happens online, it's almost impossible to control. But it didn't stop there. Because then came the second wave, the so-called leaks. Screenshots began circulating claiming to show messages from people who were inside the restaurant that night. None of them verified. None of them confirmed. But they sounded believable enough to spread. One claimed Ice Spice had already been in a bad mood before the incident. Another said there was tension at the table even before the woman approached. And a third, the one that really shook things, suggested that the interaction wasn't as random as it seemed, that there had been eye contact and some kind of silent exchange before the approach. Now, is any of that proven? No. But that's not how viral narratives work. Because once people think there's more to the story, they start filling in the gaps themselves. And that's exactly what happened here. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the legal pressure was building, fast. Because Bradford Cohen didn't just issue one statement and disappear. He doubled down. Reports started surfacing that his team was actively reviewing every second of the footage, not just the slap, but everything before and after it. The movement, the distance, the reactions, all of it being broken down frame by frame. Why? Because in a courtroom, perception isn't enough. Details matter. Timing matters. And most importantly, who escalated matters. And that's where things get even more intense. Because depending on how this is interpreted legally, this case could swing in multiple directions. If the slap is ruled as an unprovoked attack, then the focus stays on the attacker. But if the situation is viewed as a mutual altercation that escalated beyond self-defense, then suddenly, both sides could face consequences. And that possibility? It shocked people. Because no one expected Ice Spice to be in a position where her own actions might be questioned legally. But that's not even the biggest reveal. Because while all of this was unfolding, a new angle quietly started gaining attention. The McDonald's itself. At first, it seemed like just the location of the incident. But once people re-watched the footage, they noticed something unsettling. Staff were visible, present, watching. And yet, no immediate intervention. No one stepping in before the slap. No one separating the situation early. Just observation as things escalated. And that's when the conversation shifted again. Because now, people weren't just asking what Ice Spice or the attacker did. They were asking, why didn't anyone stop it? And once that question entered the narrative, the implications got bigger. Because if it can be shown that the environment wasn't secure, if it can be argued that staff failed to act, then this situation expands beyond individuals. It becomes liability. And that's exactly what Cohen hinted at. Holding the location accountable. Now think about what that means. A viral fight turning into a legal case that could involve a major corporation. That's not just drama. That's impact. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't escalate any further, one more detail surfaced that changed everything again. Ice Spice herself stayed completely silent. No statement. No social media post. No explanation. Nothing. And in a world where celebrities respond to everything, that silence stood out. Because it wasn't accidental. It felt strategic. Like the moment the legal team stepped in, everything else shut down. And that tells you something very important. This is no longer being handled emotionally. This is being handled legally. And when that happens, every word matters. Every move matters. And every detail becomes part of a bigger strategy. But here's the twist that left people completely divided. Some started saying her silence proves strength. Others said it suggests there's more to hide. And once again, the internet split. But this time, the stakes were higher. Because now, it's not just about opinions. It's about outcomes. Charges. Lawsuits. Reputation damage. All hanging in the balance. And the most unsettling part? We still don't know the full story. Because what's been seen online is just fragments. Short clips. Partial angles. Conflicting accounts. But once this situation moves forward, once evidence is presented formally, once both sides are forced to tell their version under pressure, the truth could look very different. And if that happens, everything you think you know right now could be completely overturned. Because the real story might not be what went viral. And the next reveal could change everything again. The moment this story hit the internet, it didn't just trend, it exploded. Because this wasn't just another celebrity headline. This was raw, chaotic, caught-on-camera drama involving Ice Spice, and the public wasted no time picking sides. Within hours, timelines were flooded. Clips were reposted thousands of times. Reaction videos started popping up every minute. And the comment sections? Completely out of control. Because this wasn't a situation where people could stay neutral. You were either defending Ice Spice, or questioning her. And that divide? It got ugly fast. On one side, fans came in heavy. They didn't hesitate. This was an unprovoked attack. She was literally just sitting there eating. This is what happens when fans forget boundaries. Supporters argued that this situation highlighted a serious issue, that celebrities, especially women, are constantly put in vulnerable positions in public spaces. They said this wasn't just about Ice Spice. It was about safety. They pointed out how quickly the situation escalated, how there was no security, and how anyone in that position would have reacted the same way, if not worse. But then came the other side. And they weren't quiet either. Critics started zooming in on Ice Spice's reaction. Not the slap, but what came after. Why did she chase her outside? Why didn't she walk away? That wasn't self-defense anymore. And just like that, the narrative split again. Because now people weren't just debating who started it. They were debating who escalated it. And that distinction? It changed everything. Then came the viral threads. Long breakdowns analyzing the footage frame by frame. Users pointing out body language, movement patterns, timing, almost like they were building their own cases before anything even reached court. One thread that gained massive traction claimed that Ice Spice's immediate pursuit showed intent to continue the altercation. Another pushed back, saying adrenaline and shock make people react instinctively, not logically. And just like that, even experts started getting pulled into the conversation. Legal commentators, influencers, and self-proclaimed analysts began weighing in, offering their takes on what could happen if this case moves forward. Some said it was a clear case of assault. Others warned it might not be that simple. And when the legal angle entered public discussion, the tension went up another level. Because now people weren't just arguing emotionally. They were thinking about consequences. Jail time, fines, civil damages. And suddenly, the tone shifted from entertainment to seriousness. But what really pushed this situation into another level entirely was when the industry started reacting. Not directly, not officially, but subtly. A few artists and influencers began posting vague messages that many believed were connected to the incident. Fame doesn't mean access. Respect boundaries or face consequences. Some people move like they're untouchable until reality hits. None of them mentioned names. But everyone knew what they were talking about. And that added fuel to the fire. Because now it felt like this wasn't just a fan versus celebrity situation anymore. It was becoming a cultural conversation. About entitlement. About respect. About where the line should be drawn. But then, something unexpected happened. A smaller but very loud group started defending the attacker. Not necessarily the slap itself, but the reasoning behind it. They argued that celebrities sometimes treat fans like they don't matter. That not every approach is meant to harm. That disrespect, real or perceived, can trigger emotional reactions. Now, whether people agreed with that or not, it added another layer. Because it introduced empathy into a situation that had been mostly one-sided. And once empathy enters the debate, things get complicated. Because now it's not just about right and wrong. It's about perspective. And perspective is where arguments never end. Meanwhile, media outlets began picking up the story. Headlines started appearing everywhere, each one framing the situation slightly differently. Some focused on the attack. Some focused on the legal action. Others focused on the chaos itself. And that variation? It shaped how different audiences saw the situation. Because depending on which version you saw first, your opinion was already influenced. And that's how narratives are built. But through all of this, one thing remained consistent. The attention didn't slow down. If anything, it kept growing. Because every new take, every new reaction, every new theory pulled more people into the conversation. And the more people got involved, the harder it became to separate fact from speculation. And that's where we are now. A situation that started with one moment has turned into a full-blown public debate involving millions of voices. Some defending, some criticizing, some just watching it all unfold. But the most important part? No one knows how it's going to end. Because until legal action plays out, until evidence is fully examined, until both sides are forced to present their case, everything right now is just noise. And in the middle of all that noise, one thing is certain. This situation has already gone way beyond a viral moment. And what happens next could shift everything again. And just when it seemed like every angle had already been exposed, every frame analyzed, every opinion argued to exhaustion, that's when the final twist surfaced. And it didn't come from social media. It didn't come from fans. It came from something far more serious. The legal strategy. Because behind the scenes, while the internet was busy debating clips and screenshots, the team representing Ice Spice was reportedly building something much bigger than people realized. This wasn't just about responding to a viral moment. This was about controlling the narrative in a courtroom. And that's when insiders began hinting at something that completely changed how people started looking at this situation. The footage everyone has been watching? It might not be the full footage. Let that sink in. Because according to emerging reports, there could be additional surveillance angles that haven't been released publicly. Angles that show what happened before the slap, not just the moment itself. And if that's true, then everything people think they know right now could be incomplete. Because here's the reality. The internet is reacting to fragments. Short clips. Cropped moments. Selected angles. But a courtroom? A courtroom demands the full picture. And if new footage surfaces showing interactions before the confrontation, tone, body language, positioning, it could either completely strengthen Ice Spice's case, or complicate it in ways no one is prepared for. And that uncertainty? That's what's making this situation even more intense. Because now, both sides are being questioned again. Supporters are asking, what else haven't we seen? Critics are asking, is there context that changes everything? And right in the middle of that tension, another detail quietly surfaced. The phone. That moment where a device was reportedly picked up and damaged? It might play a much bigger role than anyone expected. Because in legal terms, that's not just part of the chaos. That's a separate issue. A separate claim. A separate consequence. And depending on how it's framed, it could shift parts of the case away from just one side. Now imagine this scenario. One party claims assault. The other claims retaliation and property damage. Suddenly, it's not one case. It's multiple layers of legal conflict happening at the same time. And that's exactly what makes this so unpredictable. But the biggest twist? Still hasn't fully hit the public yet. Because there are now growing whispers that this case might not stay private for long. If this moves forward the way it's expected to, we could see courtroom appearances, filings, possibly even testimony becoming public. And once that happens, this story goes from viral to historic. Because every word said in that courtroom will be dissected even more than the footage. Every statement, every reaction, every detail. And that's where reputations are either protected or permanently changed. But here's the part that nobody can ignore anymore. Through all of this, Ice Spice has remained silent. No posts, no statements, no emotional reaction. Just silence. And that silence? It's not weakness. It's strategy. Because when legal action is being prepared, the last thing you do is speak publicly. You let the evidence speak. You let the case build. You wait. And that waiting is what's making people uneasy. Because it suggests something is coming. Something bigger than what we've already seen. And maybe that's the real twist of this entire situation. Not the slap. Not the fight. Not even the lawsuit. But the possibility that everything so far has only been the beginning. Because once this moves into its next phase, once official actions start being taken, once the full story is forced into the open, there won't be any room left for speculation. Only outcomes. And those outcomes? They don't just affect the people involved. They shape how situations like this are handled in the future. Where the line is drawn. Who is held responsible? And what happens when that line is crossed? So now we're left with one final question. What really happened in those moments we didn't see? Because if new evidence surfaces, if new details come out, if the story shifts even slightly, then everything we've believed up to this point could change completely. And if that happens, this situation won't just be remembered as a viral moment. It will be remembered as something much bigger. Something that started with a single moment and ended with consequences no one saw coming. And trust this, the next update might be the one that changes everything. Now, after everything you've just seen, all the footage, all the reactions, all the twists, the situation involving Ice Spice isn't just a viral moment anymore. It's a debate that's dividing everyone. So now I've got to ask you directly. What do you think really happened? Do you believe this was a completely unprovoked attack? Or do you think there's more to the story that we still haven't seen? And be honest. If you were in that exact situation, sitting down, minding your business, and someone suddenly crosses the line, would you react the same way? Or would you have handled it differently? Because that's where this gets real. Some people are saying Ice Spice did exactly what anyone would do in that moment, react fast, defend herself, and stand her ground. Others are saying things went too far, that once the situation moved outside, it changed completely. So where do you stand? Drop your opinion in the comments right now, and don't hold back. I want to see real debates under this video. And let's take it a step further. Do you think celebrities should have more protection in public spaces like this? Or is this just part of the reality that comes with fame? Because this conversation is bigger than just one incident. It's about boundaries, safety, and accountability. And trust me, this story is far from over. With legal action now in motion, there are still so many unanswered questions. And if new footage or courtroom updates come out, this entire situation could shift again overnight. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next update on this case, it could be even more intense than what we've already seen. Stay locked in, because this one isn't done yet.